coming to you straight from Manila, Philippines. This is Vice Podester. Today we're talking about startup funding, what it is, and how it works. Raising startup funding is one of the most exciting and challenging times for a company. Searching for investors, loans, grants, and other forms of funding is a big step toward business growth. It can give your startup the capital you need to keep building products or offering customers new features. Global venture funding fluctuates widely depending on what is happening in the world. Startups worldwide raised a total of $415.1 billion from investors in 2022, down 35% from 2021's all-time high. So how do you get the funding you need? Let's explain the essentials of startup funding. Startup funding is the money a business uses to start or support a new business. There are many different types of funding. Startups use these funds to cover marketing, growth, and operating expenses to launch the business. The number and types of funding options can be overwhelming for a new startup. Understanding the types of startup funding can help you understand what's out there and how it aligns with your company's goals. So what are the types of startup funding? First, self-funding. 39% of business founders fund startups with personal funds. Self-funding means that you independently provide the funding you need for your startup. This might mean personal savings, starting your business with a long timeline, or running on a tight budget. These are some of the other self-funding strategies. Bootstrapping. Bootstrapping isn't just using personal funds to start a business. Bootstrapped businesses also use early startup revenue to continue running the business rather than seeking outside funding. Bootstrapping is a hotly debated topic. It helps founders keep control of their businesses instead of giving equity to investors and avoid interest payments from taking out loans. The downside, if the startup fails, the founder loses their savings or that of their family and friends. Credit cards. Credit cards can help you get the resources you need to grow your startup. 70% of businesses use credit cards as a source of startup funding. That said, keep a close eye on interest rates, penalties, and payments to make sure that your credit doesn't suffer as you grow your business. Barter. Bartering can be a useful way to finance big purchases like furniture, phones, or advertising for your startup. Startups that use bartering offer a useful product or service in return. This can save operating funds and expand your network. Some startups begin with a commitment from an early customer who believes in their value. In this situation, the customer's payments alone can fund the startup at the beginning. Another type of funding is crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a way to raise money online through online platforms. While some sites have a built-in audience, many need you to build your own following with your own promotional strategy. It's a low-commitment way for you to get support and build early interest in your startup. Small businesses can use crowdfunding sites to quickly access cash. These gains may mean giving up equity in the business or offering rewards. It's also important to be transparent about your company's health throughout the process. Another type of crowdfunding is sourcing through family and friends. Many startups begin with funds from close friends and family. If you're not sure about asking for a loan, crowdfunding can be a simple way to ask your community to support your new venture. The third way of funding your startup is through loans. You can use the money to build, repair, enhance, or reopen a business. What you'll need to qualify for a loan will vary depending on the lender, amount, and type of loan you borrow. One type of business loan is personal business loans. If you have a strong credit score and personal finances, you can also take out a personal business loan. This type of loan may have a lower interest rate and a quicker approval time. At the same time, do your research before you borrow. Some lenders have restrictions about taking out a loan for startup funding. Another type of funding is through grants. A grant is a financial award for a business from a government, corporate, or nonprofit entity. Grants are gifts, so they don't need to be repaid. These mission-driven investments are often quite competitive. For many grants to qualify for funding, your startup goals and values need to be aligned with those of the organization you're applying for. Next type of funding is through private equity firms. High-growth companies are enticing for venture capitalists. If a company fails, the investors won't see a return on their contributed capital, but if a company succeeds, the payout can be in the millions. Investors hope the companies they invest in do one of the three things: go public, get acquired, or pay back their investment with interest. Private equity firms often sit on the board of a startup or act as advisors. They have a stake in the business and will do what they can to help it succeed. Venture capital. These are usually large investments. This startup funding is for a startup that's prepared to use the large investment and quickly grow. That said, micro VCs can work for startups that don't need as much funding. Venture capitalist funding is difficult to get and often takes time and preparation. Success can also mean that you will lose some control over your startup. Changes like staffing or spending often mean conversations with investors. Instead of quick decisions, all parties must come to an agreement. Angel investors. Angel investors, private investors, and silent partners are other options for startup funds. These are individuals who fund startups, often with their own money. This investment may be in exchange for equity or partial ownership of the business. Another type of funding is through incubators and accelerators. Startup funding once focused on a small elite group of founders, but the industry has been shifting to support founders who haven't had access to private equity, loans, or grants. Sustainable funding resources are essential for equitable entrepreneurship. These programs also support funding for people with marginalized identities. Incubators and accelerators are essential programs for startup founders, especially those starting a business for the first time. They offer capital, mentorship, and networking. There's a slight difference between the two, which you need to know if you're considering this type of startup funding. Incubators help entrepreneurs build their businesses. They focus on developing a business plan, name, website, and a minimum viable product, or an MVP. If a company already has an MVP, an accelerator expedites growth. Here, founders receive mentorship, funding, and networking connections. Incubators also run on a flexible schedule. Accelerators are competitive mentor-based programs. They offer guidance, support, and limited funding in exchange for equity. These programs often run on a shorter schedule than incubator programs. Ultimately, every founder needs to figure out which type of funding is right for their startup. Investors want to support startups they believe in. They also want to make a return on their investments. That's why almost all deals with angel investors, venture capitalists, or private equity firms include equity. That way, when the company begins to earn a profit, the investors will get their money back, plus an extra slice of equity for taking a chance. And that's what we have. Thank you so much for sticking around. More episodes coming right up.